Good afternoon, students. I suppose you have understood all the topics which I've taught in our previous sessions. That is with regard to contract, what is a valid contract, what are the essentials of a contract, who is a promisor or a proposer, offerer, and who is a promisee or offeree, and what are the aspects of a valid offer, different types of offer, and what are the aspects of a valid acceptance. Then we have touched upon the differences between offer and invitation to offer. Then we have discussed about the detail, how do you communicate an offer, communicate an acceptance. Then we have spoken about revocation of an offer and revocation of an acceptance. This is what we have taken up in our previous chapter, chapter 1. I hope you have understood all the concepts taught. Then we'll start with chapter 2, that is consideration. Previously, right from the date, we have been discussing about Contract Act. This particular word consideration was oft repeated in all the sessions. What do you mean by a consideration? Consideration is something which is given on using a particular right or a property. I can exactly call it as somebody is suffering a loss. To make good that loss, some amount is being paid. Can you call that as a consideration? Usually, yes. Even if you observe carefully in a contract, you see that one person is losing a right towards his property. So the other party is making good this loss by offering certain consideration. So in the previous chapter, we have known that valid consideration is a must for a contract. Now in this chapter, we'll be learning about the specific details of this aspect called as consideration. What do you mean by a consideration? Just now I have explained. Now let us see about consideration as per law. Details of consideration had been given in section 2, subsection B of Contract Act. So what does it say? See, this part is also very much there in the definition given in your study material. But why I have written like this is, I want you to understand the definition clearly first so that you can add up these parts later. Even while studying, especially the legal definitions, I advise that you study a legal definition with one aspect like promisee. Here the law adds the other aspects so that it will be definitive and not inclusive, because people can take undue advantage in case if all these aspects are non-mentioned. As of now, please understand the definition with a straightforward meaning. So what is a consideration as defined by law? As defined by law, a consideration is something when at the desire of promisor. Please note, this is the most important part of the definition. When at the desire of promisor, the promisor's desire, money, the person who is making an offer as per his terms, the promisee. He'll be making an offer to another person, is called as offeree or a promisee. So the promisee has done something. Okay. What will he do? He performs an act. He performs an act, or he abstains from performing some act. Then for what is he going to do for that? For that purpose, this act is called as consideration for a promise. See, consideration usually arises at the desire of a promisor. At the desire of the promisor, and after that, the promisee, money, the offeree, has done certain act. That act itself is a consideration to the promisor. And what about the offeree, madam? For the offeree, there will be a price either paid by the promisor, or there will be certain right which will be forepaid money, which will be I can call it as which will be given to the promisee. In such situations, that is the consideration for promisee. So, what exactly the definition says? When at the desire of promisor, most important, there should be a desire on part of the promisor. The promisee has done something. Such an act is called as a consideration for promise. Something simple. If you by heart this definition as it is, then you can add up the other points, the promisee or any other person. Let me read the definition as it is. When at the desire of the promisor, the promisee or any other person has done something or had abstained from doing something or promises to do or abstain from doing something, such an act is called as consideration for a promise. Such an act is called as consideration for a promise. So what do we deduce, or what are we, this is deduce, or what can we say from this particular definition? What do we assume from this particular definition? From this definition we come into conclusion stating that consideration is an act. Act doesn't mean a law over here. Act means doing something. Please don't get confused. Act means doing something. It can be an act, doing something. It can be an abstinence. Abstinence means not doing anything. Right? The other day I have told you an example. A said he'll pay some money to B provided B does not file a suit against him. That is called as what? B has stopped filing a suit against A. So B had abstained from filing a suit against A. That is called as consideration is an abstinence. Consideration should be at the desire of promisor. As I told you, the most important point which I wish to cross it over here, or I need to say is mark it over here, is consideration will arise only at the desire of promisor. The promisor should come with an offer for certain consideration. He should have a desire to enter into a contract with an offeree to do an act or to not do an act. Only then the consideration, the picture of consideration will come into being. That is, consideration must be at the desire of the promisor. This point I'll explain about it when I'm explaining about the essentials of a valid consideration, or what are considered to be a valid consideration. But as of now, yeah, this comes as a third point. You please remember that promisee consideration can move from promisee to any other person. Like it might not necessarily be the promisee only doing an act or not doing an act. It can go to the third person as well. Then most importantly, consideration may be past, present and future. This usually happens in executory contracts, unilateral or bilateral. Two parties come together, enter into a contract stating that they should, like let's say A is selling his house property in the month of August. This is an executor for which B said he is going to pay the amount in the month of September. Okay. Right now we stand in June. The contract is an executionary contract. Even the consideration will definitely be paid in the future. So that's why it is called as consideration. Money, the benefit for that particular contract can arise either in the past, present or future. But what about past, madam? Past is when a consideration had been paid to the promisee, but a contract had been entered into thereafter. We'll be explaining that in a more clear sense via your essentials of a valid contract, and in the meanwhile, I'll just give you the table with regard to the essentials. So what essentials of a valid contract? See, there are total 8 points in it. So we'll be talking about 4 points each at a time along with the case studies so that it becomes easier for you to understand. So what are the essentials of a valid contract? Consideration. Essentials, or I'll say, and legal rules regarding valid consideration. So what are the essentials regarding valid consideration? The first essential which we have deduced from our previous definition is consideration must move at desire of the promisor. Consideration must move at the desire of promisor, which we have already learned in essentials of valid consideration. The next one is consideration may move from promisee to any other person. Third one is executed and executionary contracts. Maybe past, present, or future. First and foremost, we'll take consideration must move at the desire of promisor. Just now, even while talking about the definition, we have known the very first part is consideration rises at the desire of promisor. It should not be a third party. How is it possible? Let's take an example of Mr. A, B and C. Okay, B, this person is an agent. A is I'll say agency, or let us say a shop. He wants to establish a shop. Mr. A is the person who built a market yard. C, okay, C is collector. Say district collector. So what is it that had happened? C, there was this person A, one district collector had asked Mr. A to construct a market yard. Market yard is something like you might have seen this Right to Bazaar and all, right, in your city. That is called as a market yard. So C had asked Mr. A to construct a market yard, and Mr. A had constructed it. So the motive of C was people would start shops in that market yard. So there it ends. Now there was this Mr. B who wanted to open a shop in that particular market yard. So what happened now? See, this market yard is free for anyone. Now, when B wanted to open a shop, A started asking him for the commission. He said, pay me the commission, then you can open a shop in the market agency. Now, this was a case which was filed in court of law. Why? Actually, the main person, actually the promisor or the offerer is Mr. C, who wanted A to build a market yard for him. But A cannot act smart and charge commission for to B, who in turn was planning to open a shop in to be built market yard. The main person who wanted a market yard to be built is Mr. C. So whatever rights with regard to market yard will be only with Mr. C and not Mr. A. The desire, see, it was not A's desire to build a market yard. Okay? So here in this case, the court ruled that Mr. A was incorrect. Why? Because it was not at the desire of the promisor. Consideration means benefit. Yep. This consideration is not moving at the desire of the promisor. Who is giving a consideration? Mr. C. He was the one who had an idea or who wanted the market yard to be built. These both had a contract for which the A cannot say that B has to pay him certain money. This case study is mentioned in page number 1.29 and 1.30 of the study material. I'll read it out. Here, defendant means the person on whom the suit had been filed. Mane, he was like he's made to stand as a person who's done or who's committed a crime in court of law. So D, defendant, promised to pay payee a certain commission. Here B means Mr. B. Pay B a certain commission on articles which would be sold through the agency in market. Okay. Market was constructed by P means A, by B at the desire of collector C and not at the desire of Mr. B. So B was not bound to pay as it was without consideration. So hence void. This happens to be an case study which can be asked in examinations. The other simple thing is, see S, there is one Mr. S whose factory was on fire. The moment Mr. R saw that the factory was on fire, he risked his life and he saved the factory and the goods. Now, do you think S is supposed to pay any consideration to Mr. R? No. The law says no. Why? Because there is no such contract and moreover, there is no promisor. It should be desired of the promisor. R did not desire S to jump into flames and save his factory. So this is also given because this is done voluntarily. Mr. S cannot claim any kind of consideration from R. Whatever consideration should arise from the desire of promisor. The promisor should have a desire to to perform an act or make another party do an act or not do an act. That particular aspect or that act is called as a promise. Sorry, is called as a consideration. In normal terms, in layman terms, please remember consideration is something which is the benefit which is being derived to one party for losing a particular right and a monetary or any other benefit derived to other party. One party gets the property, the other party gets certain benefit like money or consideration in kind. So for the first party, the consideration is property. The second party, money. And what is recognized as consideration in legal terminology? First and foremost, as per Contract Act, we have discussed that whatever consideration is being arised, it should be only at the desire of promisor and not on the promisee. In case promisee offers to do something voluntarily, then the promisee will not have any right to claim consideration from promisor. Hope you understood this particular point. There should be some contract. Both the parties should be clear as to what they want. Even voluntary services cannot be termed as a proper ground for claiming a consideration from the other party. The next one is consideration may move from promisee or any other person. What is this? Again a case study. Where's this name? There's a case study again. So there is this mother M. Yeah. There is this mother M, daughter B, and an uncle E. So mother had written a will in the name of her daughter stating that she is eligible for all the property, but every month this daughter has to pay some amount to this uncle E. Right? Mother had given property to B stating that what you should, but condition is some pension to be paid to uncle. Nice, simple thing, good. But people make it complicated, right? So now what did the daughter do? Now daughter had written all this property to this brother B. Brother. So now, and while writing this property, she also executed a deed saying she will pay some amount to her uncle. She'll pay some pension to her uncle. Let's say pension to her uncle. Okay. See here, the consideration from daughter had moved to the brother. But now there is this particular task to be performed. What is that? Pension to be paid to the uncle. And moreover, this pension being paid to this uncle, she also had written a second deed saying that she'll pay the pension. 2 times she had said yes. But subsequently, she did not pay the pension to the uncle. In such situation, court ruled stating that even though the consideration money, whatever daughter had received, had been transferred to the brother, still daughter is at fault. She should have paid commission or that pension to uncle. Okay. So here what they say is consideration may move from the promisee. It can go like this, promisee can transfer it to another person as well. It can move from promisee to another person. This is considered, and still the promisee's rights will be there as per the contract. Here the daughter had not cannot forego her right of not paying pension to the uncle because she has transferred her right of property to her brother or in favor of her brother. So consideration definitely can move from promisee or any other person. The next one is executed or executionary contracts also. You will definitely have a consideration which we were discussing while talking about the definition of consideration. What do you mean by that? See, usually people, they enter into agreement of sale or agreement of purchase of property to be executed in future. In such cases also consideration is recognized. Here in your study material, here he has given an example of A pays rupees 5,000 to B, promises to deliver him a certain quantity of B within a month. In this case, A pays the amount whereas B merely makes a promise. Therefore, the consideration paid by A is executed whereas the consideration made by B is executionary. What exactly do you mean by that? Please underline that line, underline that paragraph, page number 1.30. See, usually let's say A and B, A has got a A wants to purchase property from B for rupees 50 lakhs. 50 lakhs. So now A had paid total amount of rupees 50 lakhs to B. But B said that he is going to give the property to A only after 1 month. In this case also the consideration is valid. Why? Because A had already executed his contract. B's part of contract is yet to be executionary. That's what it is called as unilateral contract. B has to forego his title over the property, which will happen after 1 month. Still, this particular consideration is recognized. In case if B is not transferring it, then A can sue him in court of law. That's what it talks about, executed and executionary contract. Then comes consideration may be past, present and future. Before explaining, I want you to underline this line very carefully with regard to past. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, the fourth line in the fourth para. The consideration, if past, may be the motive, but cannot be the real consideration of a subsequent promise. But in the event of the services being rendered in the past at the request of the or the desire of the promisor, the subsequent promise is regarded as an admission that the past consideration was not gratuitous. Please underline this, these 3 lines with regard to consideration which is being arised in the past. Example is, A performs some services to B at his desire. After a week, B promises him to pay to compensate A for the work done by him. It is said to be a past consideration and definitely A can sue B for recovering the promised money. Please underline these lines again. I mean to say, please go through these lines again. The consideration, if past, may be the motive, but cannot be a real consideration for subsequent promise. What exactly does it mean? I'll erase this first. Then what do you mean by consideration may be past? Past is something like, let's say A had suffered an accident. A fell down. So what Mr. B, A suffered an accident. Mr. B came down, helped Mr. A. He took care of him. He took him to the hospital on his own expense, did not demand anything from him. He helped him and A was cured. Okay. After some time, A said, thank you Mr. B, you saved my life. That's very, very kind of you. Now what I'll do is, I'll pay you 50,000 as consideration. See, the duties have been performed. B had performed his duties. That is in the past. Okay, please don't get confused. B has previously performed his duties. After few days, A had come to B and said, Mr. B, because you have done those duties, I'll pay you 50,000 for those duties. Okay, at a subsequent time. This is called as what? Past consideration. In case after A promises to pay 50,000, if A does not pay, then B can definitely sue Mr. A. That is called as consideration of the past. Okay, hope you understood. But there is one line given in your study material which says, it is their consideration if past may be the motive, but cannot be the real consideration for a subsequent promise. Quite confusing. What do you mean by cannot be a real consideration for subsequent promise? Madam, you said the promise had been made subsequently. Here what he means is, Mr. B, in case Mr. A then says, In case, continuing this example, in case Mr. A says, Mr. B, I'm paying you 50,000 rupees. Okay, it's very huge amount. Now you start serving me for the next week also. You please serve me for the next week also. Whatever duties you have done to me at the hospital, you can do that afterwards also. Can he do that? Can Mr. A do that? No, that will not be considered as valid consideration for subsequent promise. In case if it is a subsequent promise, in case if Mr. A says you please continue your duties of serving me, then a new contract has to be entered into it. A cannot say I'll pay you 50,000. Okay, I'll pay you 50,000 for these services as well as coming services. Then that will not be called as past consideration. Hope you have got my point. That is, consideration may be past. Present is, it's simple. Whatever, like a person had sold his property, the other person had paid the sale price, that is called as present. Future is executionary contract. It can be either unilateral or bilateral, which we have discussed at length in previous chapter. These are first 4 essentials of valid consideration. Now we'll go for another 4 of valid consideration. So what are the other 4 aspects of valid consideration? Other 4 points is consideration need not be adequate. Consideration need not be adequate. Performance of what one is legally bound to perform. Next one is consideration must be real, not illusionary. It must not be unlawful. Usually consideration, the other 4 points. What do you mean by consideration need not be adequate? Say there is one Mr. B who is selling his house property to Mr. A for 50 lakh rupees. But the original price of the house property is 2 crore 50 lakh rupees. Do you think the consideration is adequate? No, it's not adequate. But do you think that consideration will be recognized in court of law? Yes. Even though it is not adequate, it will be recognized in court of law. But the test is B should prove that he is not being forced to sell this particular property either due to undue influence or coercion. Coercion is forcibly. In case of B proves in court of law stating that he was forced to sell his house property, then it is called as a void contract, because a contract, as we have learned in previous chapters, should not be based on undue influence or coercion. Consideration, whether adequate or not adequate, is recognized in court of law. This particular point, please don't get confused with it. performance of what one is legally bound to perform. What do you mean by this? Let's say the best example I can quote here is, I can actually mix up these 2 points, but let me say a government employee is there. He is paid salary by the government. This is just a normal example. It doesn't really mean government employees are supposed to do like that. A government employee is there. He is paid salary by the government to perform certain duties. Let's say registrar's office, a clerk working at registrar office. What does he do when a person sells his property? They note it in bond papers and say and they stamp it. So for doing that, the general public need not pay him any kind of money. Why? Because the government gives him salary. That is his consideration. But in case a person, say Mr. X, had come to this government officer and says, "Sir, you get my documents done very fast. I'll pay you 50,000 rupees. Can this be called as valid consideration? The answer is no. See, he is supposed to do it. Whether Mr. X gives him 50,000 or not, Mr. Government Officer is supposed to register the documents and note down in his register based on first come first serve basis. He is not supposed to take additional money. So, in case of a additional consideration is being paid for a person who is performing his regular duties or legal duties, then that cannot be called as consideration. Hope you have got about it. But in case if the person is doing some other additional work in accordance with law, then definitely he can claim additional consideration. Say the same government officer is going for inspection of a property, then as per government rules, he is supposed to claim his out-of-pocket expenses. Out-of-pocket expenses means conveyance charge, food and petrol from the other person, from the person owning that property. In such situation, this point does not hold good. But whatever aspects, whatever legally he is doing some duty, is not supposed to claim additional amount on it. That's what this particular point tells. Then definitely consideration must be real, not illusionary. Best example is A and B are there. B had promised A to bring lots of tons of gold by magic. What is the consideration for A tons of gold which arise from magic? Can anybody do that? Usually it's illusionary unless and until it happens to be some kind of mythological movies. So consideration must be real and not illusionary. Finally, it should not be illegal. A pays some amount to B for killing C. That is illegal under code of law. Killing A cannot be called as consideration to killing C cannot be called as consideration to Mr. E. So these are the essentials of valid consideration. Please go through them. They can be asked as case studies. Okay. Then we'll discuss about, can a third party to a contract file a suit against either promisor or promisee? Can they do that? What does the Act say? Let's say A had entered into a contract with the B stating that A shall supply some fruits to Mr. B as on Thursday. Let's say A had not supplied fruits to Mr. B on Thursday, but B had paid the consideration to Mr. A on Wednesday. Now Mr. C comes and files a suit against Mr. A. Can Mr. C file a suit against A? The answer is no. A third party, a suit filed by a third party in a contract is not recognized. A is the first party, B is the second party, C is another party, third party. Here either A can file a suit or B can file a suit, but not C. The third person should not come and poke his nose in between. That's what this particular section says. But there are certain exceptions to this. Stranger to a contract cannot file a suit. So, cannot file a suit on contract. That is, in simple terms, a third party cannot sue on a contract. Exceptions. This is quite simple to understand. Third party, only the parties to a contract can file a case against each other. So what are the exceptions? I write exceptions. Is it or I write it from here. Exceptions. First exception is beneficiary of a trust can file a suit. Of a trust can file a suit. Members of family in case of family settlement can file a suit. In case of marriage contracts, in case of assignment, estoppel. The last one is estoppel. Acknowledgement or estoppel. I will call it as agency, or acknowledgement or estoppel. That is, estoppel means acting on behalf of another person. In these situations, a third party, I said a third party cannot sue on the contract. That is, he is not eligible to sue. But there are certain exceptions to this rule. Mane, a third party can sue even though he is not an party to the contract. How is that possible? Can we do that? There are two more points which I'll write it over here. It's better. Case of covenant running with land. And contracts entered through an agent. Okay, so what are these? What are these exceptions? They can be asked as case studies. So, first and foremost be, in case of a trust, what do you mean by a trust? Trust is something, it's an organization wherein it had been incorporated for taking up certain activities which will promote benefit to a group. Here, the group is called as beneficiary. The group of people is called as beneficiary, and the trust will be managed by certain members, a group of members, 5 or 6 members. Mind you, these members who manage the trust are called as trustees, and they are not owners of the trust. They are there only to manage the trust, and they'll be paid certain amount of salary. The beneficiaries are usually the real owners of the trust. So usually a beneficiary of a trust can file a suit. Let's say the trust members, the trustees, so not trust members, the trustees have entered into a contract with, say, Mr. XYZ, asking him for purchase of a property, asking him to sell his property. A contract had been entered into. Mr. XYZ said that he'll forego his right to property, or he's going to sell his property in the month of May, or let's say in the month of May. Trusting him, and after signing the agreement of sale and this agreement of sale, the trustees have paid the amount to this property holder. But here the property holder had not executed the sale. He said, I'll not sell you the property in spite of a contract. So here, who do you think? Do you think the trustees can file a suit? Yes, the trustees can also file a suit. But here, the beneficiary, that is, the member of a trust, can definitely file a suit against the property holder. This goes against this particular rule which says that stranger to a contract or a third party cannot sue a contract. Then we'll talk about family, especially in case if a will had been written by an elderly family member. And let's say some members' names have not been included in that will. Still, these members, the people whose the members whose names have not been included in the will, definitely can sue or can file a case in the court of law, giving their own explanations, even though they are not a party to that particular contract, that is will and the person writing the will. That is, this particular exception had been given in families. You can definitely get a doubt, how is that possible when one person is not at all included in a will? See, there is another act called as Law of Inheritance Act. They can claim their rights even though their names are not written in the will. Then in case of marriage contracts also, third person can definitely sue it and can sue or can file a case in court of law. In what way? Either the girl's father or mother or the boy's father or mother or a close relative can definitely file a case. In case of marriage contracts, provided somebody had written the prenuptial agreement and have mentioned all the details in that particular contract. In case of assignment, yes, even in case of assigning means what? Like let's say a company has certain debtors. So now the company goes to the bank and says, sir, I need money. Whatever money I'm going to get from these debtors, I'll pay it to you. In case if I don't pay, then you can collect the money directly from these debtors. That is called as what? Assignment of debts. In this case also, even though the bank is not a party to the contract between the customer and the debtor, the bank has a right to file a case against the debtor on non-realization. That is called as assignment. The next one is estoppel. Estoppel is usually a person acting on behalf of another person. Sometimes that is called as power of attorney. Like let's say, especially while there's an NRI, he wants to purchase property in India. But he cannot come to India because he has his obligations, he has to work abroad. So what he does, he takes it like as a power of attorney, he selects his wife to execute documents on his behalf. Okay, he's staying abroad so he cannot come here. So he gives his power of attorney or estoppel to his wife to act on his behalf and purchase the property. So in that situation, let's say the wife had entered into a contract with so and so builders for purchase of a flat property. Let's say the builder had not sold her this particular flat, the flat which she wanted. Even though she is not a party, she can definitely sue. Why? Because she is acting on behalf of her husband. That is acknowledgement or estoppel. Then comes covenant. Covenants are something rules with regard to land. Like usually when a land is being sold, there are certain rules which we can depending upon the I can call as legacy or the ancestral properties. There are certain covenants which have to be or rules which have to be followed. Let's say A had sold his land to Mr. B or his land property to Mr. B. He had given certain covenants to Mr. B to be followed, but Mr. B had not followed them. So the son of A can definitely file a suit against Mr. B. That is called as covenants running with the land. The next one is contracts entered through agents. Agencies you might have seen, something like franchise. Like, don't you think the Domino's original company will come here into Hyderabad and start a pizza joint? Usually no. Let's say Mr. A had taken an agency of Domino's and they have opened it. So now this Domino's have entered into a contract with, let's say, some XYZ cheese company to supply cheese. Here Mr. A had entered into a contract with Mr. XYZ company. A indeed is the agent of Domino's. So now Mr. A, let's say this XYZ company had not supplied proper cheese to Mr. A. Can Mr. A sue Mr. XYZ? Yes. Under the name of Domino's, they can definitely sue. Why? Because Mr. A is the agent of Domino's. I'll end this session here with the exceptions. Thank you so much.